Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path, and today's video is the first half of a trip. We headed down towards Cheshunt, stopped at the general store there, always a good place to stop for provisions, and then down to Lake William Hovell where we aired down. For this trip we headed via the Buckland Spur Track after traversing around the south side of Lake William Hovell, down to Tomahawk Hut, and then via Carter's Road and the Westons Track almost into Pineapple Flat Campground, but didn't actually go that way, so kept going along the King Basin Track to King Hut, and that was our lunch stop, and that's where today's video ends. So from there there'll be a part 2 where we head up to Mount Speculation, and then the back way in up to Lake Cobbler, and then out from there. So with no further ado, let's get into the actual video. So here we are, just airing down. Now I've got a few people along on this trip with me. It's a great spot there at Lake William Hovel. So you can see Matt and Linda there in his Prado, which is what he got to replace his Troopy.
Go probably 21 on the front and probably 23 on the back.
So the day started off clear and pretty much windless. It certainly doesn't stay that way, as you'll see later on in the video. And this was after about a week of solid rain. So a couple of the other guys just rocking up. We had a bit of a mix-up of exactly where we were meeting up. So that's Steve there in his GQ Patrol, and Tristan in his Rodeo, and Ben in his GU Patrol. So yeah, there's Matt's Land Cruiser Prado. He's not running a lift on that, and he's running 50/50 Mickey Thompson tyres. Ben's got his Nissan GU Patrol. He's got a standard 2-inch lift, and he's running a decent set of mud terrain tyres. Tristan's got his Holden Rodeo. I don't think he had a lift in that thing at all. He had a new set of Fork and Wild Peaks, and Steve's got his GQ with a 2-inch lift running BF Goodrich, and then of course we've got the Pajero with the 2-inch lift and the Fork and Wild Peaks. So starts off pretty easy, following around the south side of the lake, and I haven't put too much of this in because for those of you that follow the channel, you will have seen this before. Track conditions do change, and that was certainly the case today, though we did find that. We're really interested just to see how wet the track might be, because we had a week of solid rain, and I did have one or two people pull out because they were concerned as to how wet the tracks might be. When you're heading down Lake William Hovel, this little hill after that little stream crossing, it's not really a river crossing, is always a good barometer for what kind of conditions you're going to experience. When it's wet, this gets quite slippery. So today we were fine. The traction here was really good. There was no issue at all. But if you find you're climbing up this and you're struggling for traction, that's a fair indication of what you're going to be in for the rest of the day for sure. So yeah, you do find out pretty early on. It's always a scenic drive along Lake William Hovel. And yeah, these early stages, the track's in really good condition generally. You can see here a few soft spots and a little bit of water sitting around, which is reflective of the rain that had occurred during the week. And this is the first little river crossing. Now, last time we did this, it was fully covered in dirt and these rocks weren't exposed at all. So this is probably what it was like the very first time I ever drove it. So it is one of those exits that does change. And I think I picked my line just off slightly there and made that look a whole lot harder than it needed to be. So here's that same crossing from me, shot from the Sony. And what may or may not show up on camera there is there's a decent sized loose rock on the track. The front tyre just went over it, and then I've bounced to the side and gone over another rock and spat that out. So, but we got there, making it look hard. Now I'm going to say I cleared the track for the rest of the guys because no one made it look that hard after me. Matt taking his Prado there for a run. As you can see, he's just driven straight up, no wheel spin, no difficulty at all. Steve in the GQ. Likewise, he's picked a good line. Tristan in the Rodeo. That thing was so light, I don't think he was having any trouble getting anywhere. And Ben in the GU. Also making it look very, very easy. So I had to go back across and pick up the cameraman, and decided on the way back across to take an alternate line. It looked a bit interesting on the right hand side there. And it was a little bit off camber. But yeah, I thought, why drive the same line? If you got to do the crossing twice, you may as well take an alternate line. Now the guys waited up for me here. This is just probably a couple of kilometres from that crossing, and this is the turn off to the Buckland Spur Track. And as it's just come up on the screen there, it's about 14 kilometres from here down to Tomahawk Hut. Really wasn't too sure what we're in. I'd never driven Buckland Spur before, and last time I came this way, I did see 4 separate four-wheel drives all stuck on this first hill climb, trying to get up here. It probably was a little wetter than it was today though. So yeah, really wasn't too sure what we're in for, but as luck would have it, the track conditions were pretty good, despite the week of rain leading up to this particular trip. And as you might expect from a name like Buckland Spur Track, it does start off with a fairly long, steady climb. Sorry for the video distorting there. I don't know what went on there. I think it was something to do with whatever mode the GoPro went into, so it looks a bit weird coming over some of these humps where the ground sort of seems to bend and distort. So I'll try and not let that happen again. And as you can see, it doesn't take too long before, like a lot of tracks in the high country, you're sort of on the edge of a hill with a drop off on one side, enjoying a pretty scenic view while trying to climb the hill. This section was a little bit loose and gravelly, but you know, nothing reasonable throttle control couldn't handle. I've left these longer sections in just to give you an idea of how long these hill climbs are. There's probably 2 or 3 of these right throughout the track. This section was a bit clay, and as you can see there, it's certainly been soft in the past. It was okay for us today, but yeah, certainly wasn't somewhere where you were wanting to try and stop. And yeah, as you're sort of seeing, basically the first few kilometres of the Buckland Spur Track are a fairly steady climb through a variety of hills up to the ridge line, where you work your way along the ridge. It's fairly flat, and then down the other side to the Tomahawk Hut. As I mentioned earlier, this is another one of those really long hill climbs where every time you sort of come up over a crest and you think that's going to be it, it just keeps going. Not the steepest track in the world, but certainly something that's going to let you know that your vehicle's working, that's for sure. Given this was early in the morning, it was pretty fresh, and I was pleased to see this is again probably one of the first long climb tracks I've done since I've had the transmission temperature gauge fitted. So it was really good to see that the temp gauge on the transmission really didn't move too far, helped no doubt by the fact that it was early in the morning. Just stopping there to drop the cameraman off to get some footage. So here comes Steve in his GQ. Would have been good to get some of this footage on some of the steeper sections, but that just wasn't possible. It really wasn't probably safe to stop there, and I need to be able to stop somewhere to pick the cameraman up without them having to walk too far. So there's Ben in his GU, making it look easy as they always do. Look, whether they're your favourite vehicle or not, there's nothing about GUs. They're just capable. And Justin in his Rodeo. So carrying on from that section, we've still got a little bit more of a climb to go. I think if we'd had another couple of days of rain, this would have gotten pretty soft and slippery, but the ground was pretty dry before we got the rain that we got, so I think most of it either got soaked up or just ran straight off. I've had a couple of people ask me would I take a camper trailer on this track, and I think I probably wouldn't. You probably could, you know, if you've got the right tow vehicle, but if you got into trouble, there's nowhere where you could easily turn around, and you know, if these steep sections were slippery, more so than they were on this trip, yeah, I think it'd be interesting. Probably more interesting than you'd ideally want it to be, I think. Look, in a convoy with someone in front of you to help winch you up if you get stuck, it'd probably be fine, but solo I don't think I would. And we actually ran into a guy at Tomahawk Hut. He had a small camper on the back, and yeah, he was not going to come over Buckland Spur. He was going around. Because getting up's one thing, but then you've got to think about being able to control the braking going down, and if you've got a trailer on behind and you start to slide, stopping gets really interesting. So yeah, once you're up on the ridgeline, you can cruise along at a pretty good pace. It's basically a two-wheel drive gravel road for a lot of that section across the ridgeline. So again, if you look at the HEMA maps, this track's marked as difficult. I think that's probably condition dependent. It certainly wasn't difficult in the conditions that we've driven it in on this particular trip, but had it been softer and wetter, it certainly could have been. As I said earlier, there's a little bit of water laying around in places, just reminding us that we are coming in here after a week of pretty solid rain. And as I said, this section across the top of the ridgeline is basically a two-wheel drive road, a few puddles here and there, nice and wide, plenty of room for overtaking. So yeah, as long as you don't meet people on those steep sections. Having said that, you'd get past people okay there, but it's just a lot easier. And this is beginning our descent. Stopped up on top of the hill there for a quick morning tea break, and then beginning our descent down towards Tomahawk Hut. And Steve in the GQ. And Ben and Tristan in the GU and the Rodeo. So while not super steep, there's certainly some good climbs and descents along Buckland Spur. It's a good fun track to drive and pretty manageable. A few little sections like this a little bit rocky. And after that we arrived at Tomahawk Hut, so that's the approach into Tomahawk Hut there. There's a good parking area. Which we managed to just about fill up. Stop on today's trip, Tomahawk Hut. Got a good fleet of vehicles. We got the Rodeo, Matt testing out his Prado, Steve in his GQ, the Off the Beaten Path Pajero, and the GU. Tomahawk Hut's quite a well built log hut. Quite well sealed inside Tomahawk Hut here, a visitor book. And the fireplace that pretty much every high country hut has. And looks like it's been rebuilt, possibly originally built in 1927 by the look of that. And one of the few huts I've seen with a timber floor. Looks like there used to be an access road in here to the picnic area, and there's your wood storage on the side of the hut and the chimney, as well as the picnic area, which is well set up with a fire pit as well. Great little spot here. So from there we headed on Carter's Road and around to Westons Track, and there's a few side tracks there like number 3 track that we didn't take this trip because we just didn't feel we had time. That'd be probably quite interesting to drive. Steve, who was with us on this trip, has done the number 3 track before and said yeah, it's a good fun track too if you're looking for a challenge. But yeah, we stuck to Carter's Road, Westons Track, and most of that was pretty much 2-wheel drive, gravel road essentially, on the side of the mountain with some great views out across the valley. A few sections like this that were a little bit gravelly and rocky. Nothing a bit of reasonable throttle control can't ensure that you tackle without too much difficulty though. So from Tomahawk Hut there was a little bit of a climb and then traverse along the side of the hill, and then as you get down to the King Basin Road, sort of close to where the turn off to Pineapple Flat is, you've descended back down and then work your way pretty much along the base of the valley. Not going to miss when that shovel doesn't bang on the rack anymore. I have just recently finally moved that. It's amazing to think of the work that went into cutting these tracks in back in the day. Almost down to the base of the valley and onto King Basin Track. There are a number of little river crossings along the King Basin Track. None of them were particularly deep. I don't think I got footage of all of them. The GoPros were playing up on this trip a lot, losing sync to my phone to control them, and having issues recognising the SD cards and everything. So we sort of got what footage we could, shuffling things around a little bit. And again, a bit of an optical illusion there with the camera, but it's a little bit of a rise and a rocky shelf there on the track. And just on that final descent here now, down into the King Basin Road. Coming up here to one of those well-known hairpin 180 turns that so many tracks in the high country have. And a little bit like the ascent, none of these hills coming down here are particularly steep, but they are very long. So much as it was a long, steady climb, it's a long, steady descent down to the valley floor. One of those little crossings that I mentioned. So crossing back into the Alpine National Park, and along the King Basin Road here, or King Basin Track, you do cross in and out of the national park a few times. quite scenic, as a lot of high country streams and rivers are. Nice firm rocky base, and being as shallow as it was, certainly no issue for any of the vehicles today. Probably noticing the Rodeo there moving a little bit more than some of the others, not having a suspension lift. I don't know what kind of exhaust Steve's got on that GQ of his, but it's got a nice sound to it. And the Prado there riding it out nicely on coils. A little bit wet coming out of that exit. And this is actually the approach to another river crossing, but these puddles on the track were almost deeper than some of the river crossings. As you can see, the weather's changed. Looking at how much those trees are moving, this is still before lunch. The wind really picked up. And after that series of puddles, we sort of had this river crossing coming up, and quite a rocky little approach to it. So as you can see, that whole approach is just river rocks basically. I did get the feeling that this river comes up and flows through there sometimes, but once again today it was not particularly deep like any of the other crossings that we've done. Now, on our way to our lunch spot, we did find this bog hole, and there's always one. None of us particularly wanted to get mud inside our vehicles, but Tristan with his Rodeo was keen to have a crack. And as you can see by the way the back lifted up there, I think he's run into a mud wall there. And you can see at the end of that bog hole there, it's basically vertical. He was not climbing up out of that anytime soon at all. But it did not stop him having a good go. Let's just say I think he's lucky that he didn't get stuck in there. Now, as you'll see, when he's backed out of there, now, looking at those door sills at the bottom of his doors there, there's just a little bit of water coming out through those doors. That would not have been good. So from there, yeah, we pushed on another shallow river crossing. On our way to our lunch spot, we stopped for lunch just near King Hut. Rocky little crossings, but not particularly deep and not particularly difficult. Quite a change from that, going from the Troopy with leaf springs on the back and quite a long high vehicle to the Prado. We found the Prado a lot more comfortable to drive, but you definitely need to look at choosing different lines compared to when he was driving his Troopy, that's for sure.
Yeah. You know, he
It's a quick stop for lunch. Just before King Hut, there were a few people over at the hut, and this is a little camp spot just before you actually get to King Hut. So we pulled in here to rustle up some lunch. Yeah. Ben is not winching his GU into the lunch spot. He was re-spooling his winch. He just recently fitted a new carbon winch. And this little crossing is just from that camp area across to the actual King Hut. Didn't quite sync those videos up by the look of it, but yeah, quite a nice view down the river there as you make that crossing. And coming over to King Hut on this side, you can see there's quite a large open area, plenty of places to camp over here, as well as a long drop there on the left. That's the hut there on the right, straight ahead of us. So another well-maintained, possibly rebuilt high country hut. And somebody's even left a ready supply of firewood at this particular time. The inside of King Hut was nicely lined in timber, even had a ceiling this one, so it's definitely a much more modern hut than some of the others, and probably been rebuilt. Certainly if the weather was closing in and you needed to take shelter, you found yourself stuck out here, it'd be a great place to stop. And yeah, there's that good supply of firewood that somebody's left there.
Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path. Here we are at the King Hut, having just come along from Lake William Hovell this morning. This is the second hut we've seen. We stopped at the Tomahawk Hut earlier. From here we're heading up the Cobbler Staircase, which is not as much of a staircase as it used to be, and then onto the speculation track out to Mount Speculation before heading home in the afternoon. So it should be a good day, and yeah, we're about halfway through it, so thanks for watching.